Um, all right, Angie. Thanks so much for joining my podcast. It has been quite some time since we spoke last time. It was, I think, in Madrid. We were both working within Vodafone. How is it going? How are things for you right now?
So first of all, many thanks, Stefan, for inviting me to the podcast. I still remember that event. It was really amazing. I think we had a lot of time, a lot of fun during the Madrid event working for Vodafone. Well, actually, since then, it has been going very well and very adventurous because I have been working in a couple of companies since then. I have been focusing mostly on consulting. So very happy to share my my journey with you and also share some experience. So yeah, happy to be here and happy to talk about it a little bit.
Excellent, good stuff. So just as a caveat, I mean, honestly, I really believe you reached like the top of, in terms of career-wise. I mean, you really reached the top of the game by joining this McKinsey and other companies you've been working with after Vodafone. Even Vodafone was a cool company. So to start off this episode, please just let's give the listeners a short summary of your bio, and then I'm just gonna jump in with questions starting with your education, like studies. Why did you do that? Why did you choose to specialize in a different area, niche, and so on. So let's give our listeners a short summary of your bio. That would be a great starting point, and then we're gonna touch upon all the details thereon.
Okay, sure, happy to. And yeah, thanks a lot for the compliment about McKinsey. I really am happy to be part of it. I will tell a little bit more why, what are all the reasons why I'm so happy. But let me indeed first to summarize what was my professional journey. So for about 10 years, I've been part of consulting in different companies in different fields of work. So maybe first starting with my education. At bachelor's, I studied finance. So it was mostly, let's say, public finance and also some features of accounting and so on. And then for the master's, I joined CEMS, which is International Management Program. What was cool about CEMS, it was actually alliance of business schools around the world. And I also took an internship and exchange semester abroad, which was really cool and forming. And basically, I think it also defined my future path and future choices. Also happy to elaborate a little bit on that in the future. And after having studied that, I joined Vodafone. So this is also, let's say, environment where we met. There I was process manager, so I was mostly doing transformational programs. After having spent about 3 years at Vodafone, I joined EY. At EY, I was doing mostly digital projects. Mostly I was focusing on robotic process automation. It was really interesting because we focused more on the IT side. And then an offer came from McKinsey. And as of 2019, so about, let's say, 2.5 years, I became part of McKinsey. Currently, I'm there, or let's say I'm on maternity leave, but before going on maternity leave, I was an engagement manager, and I was mostly specializing in the operations. So it was, let's say, change of the operations within the company in terms of customer operations, sales operations, big transformational programs, and so on. I think it was kind of combination of what I was doing at Vodafone and also what I was doing at EY. So it felt interesting and at the same time something that I have been doing for some time. So I would say at the time and at this time, I would say good combination.
Awesome. Cool stuff, Angie. Lots to unpack there. So let's start all the way back to your studies. So you studied finance, accounting during your for your bachelor's, and then you've been mentioning this CEMS program and your internship abroad and so on. And I'm interested. What I do normally with my guests, I'm interested. What was your thought process at the time in terms of? So you've already mentioned this internship abroad. How did you tackle your studies, most of all? And you can bundle them together, your bachelor, your master's. So did you focus on these internships, on experiences abroad? and trying different NGOs maybe. What was your thought process at the time? And I'm curious to link that afterwards with what happened in your career. I mean, did you have any idea on what you want to do afterwards? Did you do particular experiences, such internships, just because you thought they will land you a particular job in consulting or in the industry? So yeah, let's if you can just elaborate on that, please, would be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that those internships and all this international experience indeed formed me a lot and really influenced my future decisions. So what I was doing during my studies, if I would summarize, I think I would say I was trying as many things and activities as possible, because when I look back, I was part of at least like 3 consulting clubs, 2 NGOs. So I was really trying a lot of stuff, meeting many people, think about different ways how my career would go in the future. So I was part of consulting club that led me to people that later joined McKinsey. And since I stayed in touch with them, actually, they told me how cool of a company it is. So when I was approached by a headhunter from McKinsey, I was thinking that, okay, maybe I will contact them and they will let me know if it really is that cool. So those I would say contacts in the early days really helped me to form decision. That's one thing. I was also part of NGO or student organization called ISEC that is basically doing international exchanges of the students and young professionals around the world. So this is another experience that formed me a lot, because I learned the value of international exposure, of traveling, of exploring new cultures. So this was also one of the reasons why at the master's I joined CEMS, because CEMS is focusing on international management, and it's a lot about diversity, about meeting international students and so on. Because in the first semester that you do, it's at your home university, and many exchange students come to study with you. And then the second semester is about abroad studies, and you go to one of the business schools from the Alliance, and there you study in the partner school. So my school of choice was in Copenhagen, in Denmark, which I really loved. So first of all, it was really different from what I experienced in Prague, because it was really, I would say, hands-on study, because we interacted with a lot of professionals, with really like top experts from the field. So it was really interesting for me to experience, let's say, less academic kind of study and more practical. And also I met really cool people during the studies. It was a lot of fun. So I really think fondly of that time. So yeah, that was I would say second thing that formed me, like this international exposure. And also when I was studying CEMS, I think I learned a lot about consulting, because it was very frequent that old alumni from CEMS came to talk to us, like what they've been doing, how their career has been going. And at that time, we had many visitors from consulting as such. And I really like the stories, because they explained us how they made their choices about the career. It resonated a lot with me. Also, they told us about their projects, like what they have been working on, and I really found it fascinating. And I was thinking, okay, this sounds really cool. Maybe I could also try that for the future. So it was definitely influencing me a lot too.
Right. So you've been exposed at an early stage during your studies, so you knew what consulting is, and did you know at that time that this is what you want to do? So consulting was on the radar starting with your studies, right?
Yes, pretty much. Actually, it started during my studies, because it was actually a funny story, because it was my first summer after I started studies at the bachelor's at this time. And I was planning to go to a town and city abroad. But the funny thing happened with my passport, so I couldn't travel. So I basically came back to Prague, and I was thinking, okay, what to do with the summer? I cannot go to this destination I was planning to. And as a coincidence, my friend from ISEC, from the student organization, she was HR at a consulting company. At the time, it was Accenture, and it was really coincidence, but she was looking for someone, just to join on a short-term project, just to help a little bit as a part-time. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with the summer, so let's try that. The company sounds cool. It had very nice central location in very nice architectural building. So I also love that aspect. So I was like, okay, it's a good replacement for summer. So yeah, I joined Accenture at the time. And then actually I stayed there because I like the team, I like the work a lot. So I started with consulting as such during my studies. And then when thinking about like what to do next, it just came naturally that either I will do internal consulting at Vodafone, which was my first job, and then I was okay. So maybe I can also try external consulting. So this is why I joined EY and later McKinsey. So somehow, at least I feel that it came naturally because I had exposure to the people. Also started a little bit part-time help and so on. So I knew a little bit what the field was about. I knew that I liked this variety of the projects and learning all the new stuff all the time. So yeah.
Right. So what do you recommend? What's your piece of advice for students out there? And regardless they want to join consulting or not, just how should someone approach their studies? What should be like at least three main points you will point out for them?
Yes. So I would say try as many activities as you can and as many, let's say, clubs or fields of interest as you can. This is what really defined me and what helped me to orient a little bit what I like, what I'm interested in. So you can start with looking what kind of clubs do you have at your university or at your high school. And then you will see naturally that this is something that maybe interests you, that you like talking to people from that club and so on. And this will lead you to thinking, okay, so maybe these companies in the field would be a good match for me. And then you can start talking to their employees and, like kind of try to understand whether it would be a good fit. So that's first advice, like try many activities, join many clubs and so on. Second piece of advice, and what really helped me again, is some network of, let's say, mentors, coaches, sponsors, and so on. Because of course, during each step, when I was thinking, okay, whether I should change my path, whether I should go to another company, or whether I should even stay in consulting, those were the people that helped me most. People that had some more experience than me, that were staying in the business for a couple of years, and they could probably provide me the best perspective. Because at the time when I was thinking what to do after school, I wasn't sure that I would like to stay in consulting, but talking to them, discussing my situation, discussing my dreams, my aspirations, and their feedback really helped me to make this like final decision. So that's my second advice, like surround yourself with people who you trust, who you think could be good advisors to you, and try to talk with them. What do you like? What is your dream? And together you will maybe figure out some options for you. Yeah, and third point, I also mentioned it earlier, and that's this international aspect. So I would say today, well, not today per se, because now it's unfortunately COVID times, but I hope soon it will be a little bit better and travel will be possible again. And at the time, I would definitely advise people to travel and also to try some international internships, international exchanges, and so on, because this really, I would say, broadened at least my perspective. I was studying at Copenhagen, as I mentioned. I did internship in London, which was also different, which gave me another perspective. And also I was part of many international projects. And I would say that was like the most eye-opening experience that I had, because when you work with people with from different cultures, from different backgrounds, you start seeing your everyday, let's say, tasks at work a little bit differently. And also I would say you start perceiving the world differently. So yeah, third advice, if possible, and I hope it will be as soon as possible, travel, do exchange semester, do Erasmus, do some internship abroad and so on, and try to expose yourself to international students, to some expats living in your hometown and so on.
Love it. So basically, also the internship in London was during the studies.
Yes.
Wow, that's great. I mean, in the end, you were a well-rounded individual who lived already in Prague, Copenhagen, and London. I mean, which is great. I mean, even from the perspective for you as an individual, right? But also from the perspective of a company who want to employ you. That's unbelievable. let's move on. So cool stuff. I love the piece of advice you gave for the students out there. Let's move on. And what's next? So the next is the Vodafone period, right? Tell me more tell me a little bit more about Vodafone, and also about this Discover program as well. So your current job and what, how, because even this management training, let's call it like that, it was somehow like designed in such way to target these type of students that were doing the things you've mentioned, like internships abroad and cool stuff. So yeah, please tell me a little bit more about Vodafone.
So at the time I joined Vodafone, there was already a formed team. The team's goal was to run a large-scale transformational projects, mostly focused on changing the processes. It was, I would say, very interesting and very challenging task at the same time, especially at me then when I was coming fresh from school. I was fresh graduate, and all of a sudden I was given a challenge to persuade some people that the processes they've been doing for, I don't know, 10 years needs to be changed. So it was really, really challenging for me at the time, because of course you need to think, okay, so how the person will react, what is in it for them, what are the benefits of changing the process they've been doing for so long, how to communicate these benefits to them, how to basically make their life easier, and so on. So at the time, I remember that I was thinking, of course, of the process side of how the operations would run in the future, but mostly I was thinking about what is it important for people, how the new project will work for them, what is it in them for the training, what they need to learn, what they will be happy about, what they will not be so happy about the new process. So what I want to say, I guess, is that the psychological effect was maybe even more important than the operational effect of it. So this, I think, was my most interesting experience from this, like, let's say, psychological or people perspective, because I think what I learned there was a lot about thinking about motivations of people, how to talk to them, how to listen to them, how to understand their motives, what would really make it easier for them to accept this change, and so on. So it was a good study.
Cool. I mean, it's fair to say it was like a sort of consulting job. I mean, basically you are driving change within internal processes and so on, and it's basically what a consultant does for a client.
Yes, basically. Yes, I also see many similarities. So I would say it was good preparation, or let's say a good start for the other assignments to come. And about Discover, so Discover program was quite a big thing in the Czech Republic. So it was very cool at the time. I think it still is, as far as I'm concerned, it still runs, which is great. I had really cool team of about, I think, 12 people. There were 12 of us from the Czech Republic who were part of Discover. And what I really liked about it, that we had many trainings that developed us about, let's say, management of the people. It was about, I don't know, negotiation skills, leadership skills, like all these basically soft skills that you would need in the future as the future manager. And of course, it was really interesting also that we had this opportunity to come along with all the other discoveries from all over the world, and yeah, meet them, have some trainings, party. So that was the Madrid time. So I really loved it. It was, again, really, really interesting from international exposure point of view, and also I think it's also a different perspective when you meet all the excited, aspiring people who have a lot of energy, who want to change the Vodafone in their country. So it was very motivational for me at the time. I can remember that very well.
Great times. Yeah, I do remember as well.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it was like such a cool initiative, because even I remember, so we had these events, right? Like each year we had an event where a bunch of people were partying and working together, right? And I remember when, for example, that year when we had the event in Madrid, afterwards I got back to Bucharest, and I had like colleagues from different countries that were asking me, okay, Stefan, I know you are in the Bucharest office. I know you've rolled out this project that we are trying to implement right now. Would you give me a point of contact and stuff? So it was really great. I mean, it was really like the network, and it was unbelievable. Hopefully I still wanna see the project going on. I mean, I don't want it to stop. I'm not up to date. I don't know what's happening, but I hope it's running as this time, even today.
Yeah, I think it is. Yes, I think I saw something on LinkedIn about like half a year ago. So
Cool.
maybe it changed the name, but definitely there is some talent program in the Czech Republic still going on, which I'm very happy for, because exactly like this network of contacts, I also was in touch with a couple of colleagues from Discover, and we exchanged basically some piece of advice. I remember at the time I was curious how the processes were going. I think it was Italy. So I reached out to the guy that was participant of Discover, and basically he really helped me a lot. So yeah, I think that network was really cool, and is still really cool.
Right. Hence, I mean, this podcast now, it's
yeah.
I'm grateful for the opportunity. All right. So what's happening? Do you want to share a piece of advice before leaving Vodafone experience behind? I mean, for example, would you recommend to young professional students to join such an opportunity? Because it's not just Vodafone who is having this type of program. Maybe it's another company as well. They call them, I don't know, either management trainee, either internships. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, would you recommend this type of initiative for students and young professionals?
No, absolutely. I think what these kind of development programs can give you are definitely really cool soft skill trainings. So I remember really like one of the best that I've ever had in my professional life. So we had some professionals from the field of, let's say, management development. We had some professionals from psychology. We had some even like neuro coaches that were talking to us about neuro coaching. It was really cool and really new at the time, so nobody knew about it, and we were one of the first that learned about it. So really valuable soft skill trainings. Then it can also improve your exposure to the leadership. So I remember that we had about, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings with senior leadership of the company. So they get to know who you are, like what your aspirations are. So they remember your name. And when the time comes that, let's say, interesting project within the company appears, they definitely have you under their radar and they can appoint you to the project. So it's also good from perspective of this exposure to the senior stakeholders. And last but not least, network, definitely. So I'm still in touch with a couple of people from Czech Discover, or it can be also, of course, any program in any company. So it also helps you for the future, and it can form some new friendships as well. So definitely join them if there is such an opportunity.
All right, cool. So let's move on. Next, it's EY, and it's interesting because even in my case, I left Vodafone for EY. So why did you do that, and how was it like? What was your thought process at the time?
It's really funny though. We seem to be target audience for the EY headhunters, but yeah. So I joined a robotic process automation consultant position. Why did I do that? Basically, I was doing a couple of IT or digital related projects at Vodafone. Actually, my last project was about a large-scale transformation of IT systems. And I found myself quite interested in that field. So before I was thinking I will only do business all of my professional life, and IT, I am not a programmer. I don't know how SQL works. I will never touch it. But on the contrary, when I was learning about it, when I got some bigger exposure to it, I found it really fascinating. And also at the time, I think it became quite a big thing. I think it was about 2017. So new technology started to appear. It was very popular to learn about artificial intelligence, about the big data. So I was thinking, okay, why not to move a little bit aside of business and combine business with IT? And that was exactly what the position at EY was about. So we were running robotic process automation projects, which was basically automating routine processes of the company with the help of IT technologies. So it was partially business because we were looking at the processes, just as I was looking at Vodafone, but it was also IT at the same time because we were using IT tools to automate those processes. So it was, for me at the time, I felt like quite smooth transition. So it was not completely like move from, let's say, business process analysis to programming, but it was something that I knew, but also something that I could learn more about. So that was basically rationale for my move. Really cool experience from perspective of learning more of the IT trends, communicating with the developers, understanding how IT development is done. Also looking at the organization from perspective of the potential savings, how they can become more efficient, more, let's say, smoothly running. Before I was doing it only for one company, for Vodafone. At EY, I had the chance to look at different industries, different cases, different clients. So it was really interesting to see also like different working environments because I knew Vodafone quite well, like what works, what doesn't work. But here I had every, I would say, 2 to 3 months different clients. So I had the chance to look into not only communications, but also telecommunications. Not only telecommunications, but also to banking. I spent about half a year looking at the process in the reinsurance company. So I think this was like the most learning point for me, not to look only at one industry, but look at a couple of them.
Cool. I mean, eventually that's what the main difference in between industry, Vodafone, and consulting. And
yeah.
I mean, I'm curious, Angie, what was the tool you were using with EY? It was UiPath, or
yes,
because
UiPath.
it's a Romanian company.
I know, right? It's unicorn. By the way, really lovely representatives. I was in touch with some of them when we were implementing bigger cases. UiPath, and also we were using Blue Prism, which is competitor from the US. I don't have a favorite. Actually, I liked both of them because each of them have some unique functionalities. It usually depended on the client who they chose. So we were kind of vendor agnostic. We implemented both tools, also trying a little bit with automation anywhere, but it was more, I would say, hardcore IT. So we really needed programming. But I really liked how clients approached it. Basically, they usually never heard about this process automation before. They never heard about either UiPath or Blue Prism, but at least in my experience, they were quite open to it. So basically, when we looked at their processes, they were starting to help us quite proactively, trying to identify what could be the best departments to start with, which could be the first use case to experiment. So at the time, I really was happy because at first I was really afraid that nobody would say yes to it because it was really, I would say, unknown at the time in the Czech Republic. But I was quite positively surprised that people were like, okay, well, haven't heard, but why not to try? So had quite good experience in that.
Cool. Angie, I'm interested in terms of client interaction, because in Vodafone, of course, you knew your clients, I mean, they were your colleagues, but now you had to experience different industries, different clients. How was it like? It was easy to adapt to this change, to this client interaction, client-facing role. It came organically for you. I mean, I think in your case, because you knew consulting, you had it on back of your mind even during the studies. But because I think it's a quite important step when joining consulting, and this client facing skill, it's quite important. How was it for you? It was easy to adapt to this change? Do you have some tips and tricks for professionals in terms of ramping up this skill when it comes to client interaction?
Oh, very good question. So I was thinking like the main difference was that at Vodafone, I was running between the different stores of the building. At EY, I was visiting different parts of the town or even different countries. No, I'm joking. But I think the biggest difference was that was the difference in the industry. So, and here comes the advice, if I may, from me. Before each meeting with the potential client, I need really to learn what the industry was about. I needed to understand the essence of the company and the potential problems or challenges that they're facing. So if I look back, it required much more preparation than at Vodafone, because at Vodafone, I kind of like more or less knew what each department is doing, what it is about, what industry is about. But at EY, or let's say external consulting as such, my advice would be to try to understand what the client's background is, what the aspiration of the client is, and then to tailor your discussion with the client to it. So I remember two distinct situations. At one of them, I was really well prepared, so I knew exactly where the company is standing, what the person talking to me at the time, CFO, wants, and so on. It went really well because basically they, I think, appreciated my preparation. At the second case, I didn't have time, or I don't know, somehow didn't prepare too well. It was quite a disaster. So, so preparation, I would say, is, I don't know, 80–90% of the success, especially in those meetings where you need to persuade the client about the new solution, about choosing you as the provider. It's all about learning in advance about the company needs.
All right. All right. Before leaving EY, tell me a little bit about the learning curve. Was it more steep working as in consulting? I mean, in terms of working hours, yeah, why not? I mean, you had more on your plate than back in the days working with Vodafone.
Mm-hmm. I think for me it was definitely more hours, but that might have been also due to the fact that I needed to learn a little bit more about IT. So I remember also taking some trainings in programming in Prism and UiPath. For me, it was super challenging because I'm not such a technical person. So that was, I think, one of the factors to it. Also, second, I would say variable that influenced my working hours, or let's say overall effort, was exactly the fact that I needed always to prepare for the knowledge of the new industry or knowledge of the new client situation. The work itself, I think it could be comparable because of the project we were looking at similar tasks. In Vodafone, it was, let's say, business automation of the processes. At UI, it was IT automation of the processes. But basically, our ultimate goal was the same, to make processes more efficient. Also, what was different between the two companies, at EY, I at later stages led a team of developers. So definitely it was also to understand what exactly their work is, how can I help them on the roadmap to implementation. So it was more for, let's say, leadership exposure, which was new to me. So I definitely also spent more hours trying to understand how to structure the project, how to lead the different teams, how to basically make it sustainable for them to work, like not too much, but at the same time meet the deadline. So yeah, I think it was also due to the natural evolution of my position, because I joined EY as a senior consultant, but later was promoted to manager. So also the new responsibilities came along it. So that was also the reason why it was a little bit different angle of what I was doing at the projects.
Cool. Now let's leave EY on a side and just touch the firm now, McKinsey, which I mean, everyone knows. This is basically tier one. It's basically the one of the biggest and most important companies when it comes to consulting. How was the process from jumping from EY to McKinsey, and why did you do that?
It was an interesting coincidence because at the time when I was approached by McKinsey, I was working on an EY project in Munich, and I was contacted by a headhunter from the Munich office of McKinsey. So I was thinking, why? Who gave this tip? So how is this possible? But I think after all, it was a coincidence, but you never know. Basically, my motivation to go from EY to McKinsey was the strategy angle of McKinsey. While EY was quite operational, we were focusing on the processes analysis of the process redesign. McKinsey had this, let's say, more strategy angle to the operational projects that they did. So I ended up doing operations, but with, let's say, more strategic perspective. I will give an example. So for example, when we are setting up new processes at the client, we are looking at the strategic roadmap that they have. or we defined for them the strategy how to change the operations. So it was not about, let's say, individual processes to be changed, to be automated, but it was more high-level view of the company strategy going for, let's say, 5-10 years and so on. And this is what I wanted to learn. So if I go back, let's say, first I looked at the internal processes of Vodafone from the business perspective, then I added to it a little bit of IT flavor, but I also would love to learn more about, let's say, long-term strategy of the company. And hence, when McKinsey approached me, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is something that could really add up to the operational experience, this more long-term view. So yeah, I was at the time at Munich. I was thinking, okay, maybe I will stay in Munich, but I really loved Prague at the time, and also had my boyfriend at the time there, and now my husband, and all of my friends in Prague. So I was thinking, oh, it would be really cool to join that McKinsey company, but ideally in Prague. And hence, McKinsey is a very international company. Actually, they connected me to the Prague office. So it was the best of both, because I worked for the Munich operations. I did consulting from this operational angle, but from Prague, which was basically the best combination for me, because I stayed in the city, which I had connections and family in, but at the same time, I did exactly the field I wanted. So this is how I started my McKinsey journey.
Cool, well done, congrats. Tell me a little bit about. So I remember I've read the books like McKinsey Way and stuff like that, about when they talk about MIFI, about consulting principles. How was it for you? I mean, from the inside, how was it to work with colleagues and implement, always having in mind when you are communicating to clients or with other peers about being MIFI, about being structured and so on? How was it like working? Basically, I mean, this would be the question. How is it like to be surrounded with consulting, with McKinsey consultants, working with McKinsey and advising clients on more strategic initiatives?
Very good question. I think like my first project was really shocking for me. I really must say that word shocking, because I understood actually that I had some experience at Accenture, Vodafone, EY, and so on. But McKinsey was like whole new methodology, philosophy, and for me it was new whole way of thinking. So I think one of the most shocking experience for me was one of the first brainstorming sessions, which we call problem solving. And I was just really surprised, like completely different way of running meetings, completely different way of collecting ideas. It seemed to me that it was super efficient, but at the same time I was thinking, okay, I will never learn that, like how they come up with ideas so quickly, how they're so efficient in writing them down. Why do they prioritize that fast? So I was really shocked, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I was a hiring mistake. I will never be able to do such a style, like different thinking, different methodology. But what was the good thing about it? From day one, basically, you have somebody or a mentor that helps you during this way. So even though it's a little bit shocking, with time you will learn it, and you really appreciate how efficient it is. So what I really love about it is that in each team, basically, there is no hierarchy, and everybody is totally entitled to communicate their opinion freely. And at the time, we have these problem-solving sessions, which is basically structured brainstorming. Everybody throws the ideas, whether it's business analyst, partner, whoever, and it's really open. And basically, you are obliged to communicate your opinion. It's called obligation to dissent. So, for example, if someone says something that you don't agree with, you should say it openly. So it's very democratic, it's very open. At the times, I was even shocked, like how some people freely express their opinions against the partners. So there was no hierarchy whatsoever, but it was appreciated and it was taken. So it was really something that I said, wow. So this is how it can be done. So that was one aspect. And second aspect was basically the structure of the project as such. I found it extremely well planned from the beginning. So sometimes I was even surprised that basically we started each project with some hypothesis, how the things could be solved at the client. I was thinking, but we don't know about the client, like how can you make a hypothesis? But basically, because of the experience of the partners, because of the knowledge of the client situation, because of the many cases we did at different clients internationally, we could have formed such a hypothesis. So it was really interesting to see in the end of the project whether the hypothesis was proven or not. But definitely something that I have never experienced in different jobs. So also a little bit new for me, also extremely interesting to be part of this process.
Cool. If you would think of 3 like top skills that McKinsey is looking at when hiring either students, either already professionals with different backgrounds, what would be like top 3 skills that that you would mention over here? I'm curious. I mean, of course, maybe problem solving and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say actually that would be something that I would place as number 1, though maybe number 2 will be equally important. So number 1, problem solving skills. So maybe just explain a little bit what I mean by that. It's problem analysis. If you are presented with completely new problem that you have never experienced before, how do you deal with it? How do you structure the questions to it? For example, if you're given the task to answer how to improve the profitability of the client, what are you thinking? Are you thinking about costs and revenues? Are you thinking about the competitors? Like, what are the basically variables that you take into account? How well do you do the math? Of course, you are not expected to count up to 2 decimal places, but more or less you should be able to count freely in your head up to, let's say, higher, let's say, ranges of the numbers. How well can you make the assumptions? For example, if you're asked, I don't know, how many ice creams are sold in Florida, how, yeah, I sometimes ask these kind of questions. So how your thought process is going. Are you able to make reasonable assumptions? Are you able to ask the right questions? That's maybe also a very interesting point. So I feel that our interviews are not that much about like knowledge per se, but it's about the ability to ask the right questions. So having this analytical mindset, thinking what would be the best question to ask in the situation, for which kind of data should you ask to be given, and so on. So problem solving. Equally important is this, I'm not sure how to name it. We basically call it behavioral part of the interview, but it can be also maybe explained as, let's say, personal side. What usually we interview at this personal type of interview is how the person solved some kinds of situation in past. It can be professional situation, it can be personal situation. We ask questions, for example, from the past projects that the person did. How did they cope with situation, let's say, of the conflict within the team, when they had to persuade someone to either go with some idea or to change the process that they had, and so on. And we look at how person was thinking, what they were thinking at that point, what was their motivation, why did they choose this or that path. So we are really looking, or we are trying to look inside the person's motivation, decision-making process, and so on, basically to determine a fit, to determine basically what the person is motivated by, and so on. So that's the second thing, this personal touch. And third thing, I would say it's openness and ability to learn. As mentioned a couple of times already, consulting or external consulting is a lot about adjusting to different situations, to new industries, to new client situations. So I think what is really valuable and important is to be able to learn quickly and to be open to basically be thrown into something completely new, orient yourself quickly in it, be excited by the newness of the situation, not to be too stressed, even though it's, of course, easier said than done. I remember myself a couple of times when I had some project in, let's say, paper producing industry or some gas distribution industry. I was like, okay, I will never be able to consult anyone because I know basically like nothing about the industry. But you learn, and you have experts that consult you, and you have clients that you can talk to. So it's about overcoming this fear that, okay, I don't know about this industry or this field, but it's really about being open, being teachable, and so on.
Cool. I don't know if you've noticed, but throughout the podcast, I keep asking you, okay, give me 3 top piece of
Yeah.
because this is what I've read in that book, if I remember well, and maybe this is what you are doing in McKinsey. Okay, write down at least 3 bullet points.
Actually, I'm laughing all the time because when we have some like informal chats, because I think it becomes part of the thinking process of my colleagues, because even when you're talking about, I don't know, buying some sort of an ice cream, they're like, okay, I chose the vanilla because of the 3 points. I'm like, okay, stop now, because you're sounding like a robot. So yeah, it's really becoming part of your head. Sometimes the husband makes fun of me, like, okay, and now stop being a robot and answer me normally. You don't need to give me 3 points. Like 2 are just enough. So yeah,
well,
it can be really contagious.
I'm curious. Do you think that if the school, I mean the university is teaching those skills, like properly teaching the students problem solving, being analytical, of course mathematical and this type of things, they are on the side, but this type of behavior, problem solving, are they well taught in school, or is it students' job to just join these consulting clubs to do their research and step up their game? What's your opinion on that? I'm just curious.
Excellent question. Actually, I was thinking about it a lot recently, because I was thinking back about my student times, and I think it really depends. So I can say that at CEMS, this international management program, it was really, really innovative and really progressive. And we had really many trainings and classes, or let's say sessions about this, like, let's say, new skills that need to be practiced in the nowadays fields of work. I also experienced that a lot when I was studying in Copenhagen. As mentioned, we had professionals from that field that were teaching us. It was, let's say, the best negotiator at the McKinsey Company. It was one of the best entrepreneurs from the Denmark that was giving us some tips. How did he start his own enterprises? How we should go about it. We even had our own startup competition, that we really started our own little companies, and the final grade was basically given based on how successful we were in really selling the product to the customers. So I had a good experience in schools being very, I would say, open to this new innovative types of teaching. But, and I need to say that at the same time, I had friends, and also I saw myself in other fields of study or in other universities. This learning was quite academic still in some cases, and if the students wanted to learn something, let's say, more new and more progressive, they had to join this either consulting clubs or investors clubs, or I don't know, for example, Toastmasters for the speech and so on. So hence my advice number 1, be active, be open to the new clubs, be open to joining some interested parts, whether it's the field of consulting, whether it's the field of investment, doesn't matter. But I would say don't always rely just on the academic part of it, but also be open to the practical side.
Cool. Do you think, because I mean now I see it. I've told you that doing my due diligence before having the podcast, I was reading this article on Medium about how you planned for your wedding in the consulting methodology, right? And you were mentioning the Kanban, the MIFI, tools such as spreadsheets and etc. And I'm curious, do you think that the consulting is like a vocation? I mean, because in your case, probably you are really good at consulting, and hence you apply consulting also in your personal life, of course, professional life, in all the aspects of your life. Do you think it's quite a vocational career, or do you think anyone can I mean, do you think anyone can do it, or is it just for a very particular niche of people that are really like, I'm not gonna say robots, but these high achievers, I don't know how to call them.
Yeah, I think it's a fun question. I would say it's for everyone. I'm just thinking from perspective, like, who do we have in our Prague office? So we have one past priest So he was really practicing priest in China. Yeah. Then we have one, basically, I'm not sure how it's said in English, but engineer that does, what is it called? Basically atomic reactions.
Wow. Rocket scientist, huh?
Almost rocket scientist. Actually, at my first training, I met two aeronautical engineers that were also constructing, I think, rockets for NASA. So I would say, yeah, like we have such diversity in professions and also educations. I would say it's for everyone. But at the same time, I would say that my colleagues, or let's say also colleagues from different locations of McKinsey, they share some common characteristics. And this is this, I would say, definitely ambitions, hardworking attitude, openness, as mentioned, very important skill, or let's say attitude in consulting. Quite many of them are very communicative, but we also do have definitely some introverts that are, let's say, more comfortable in analytical type of the project. So I would say we have high diversity, but at the same time, yes, there are some characteristics that unite us. If students, listeners to your podcast are interested, and they don't have specific profile, let's say specific business school, I would say they shouldn't be afraid at all, because as mentioned, like with any kind of education, you can definitely join consulting if you're interested, just if you're passionate about it and yeah, think that it could be a good fit, they should definitely try interview process.
Cool. Love it, Angie. Let's just take a step back, because I've been hearing a lot like this network mentors. You've been mentioning at the university when you were talking about your studies, when you were talking about Vodafone, about this Discover, and eventually how you ended up from switching from Vodafone to EY and maybe to McKinsey. It was due to your network that helped you out with this headhunter. And I wanna emphasize, how important do you think it is having this network around you and mentors to reach out to, and which are in not necessarily better position, but with higher with a better knowledge when it comes to a particular industry, a particular role that you want to pursue eventually in the future?
I think it's actually extremely important. I remember myself finishing the school, finishing the university, and thinking whether I should join the Vodafone, or I also had another offer. And it was actually the lady from CEMS that I met during one of the alumni get-together that became my informal mentor. And she gave me a lot of good tips, like why should I or why shouldn't I join Vodafone? I must say that I extremely value that she was not saying you should or you shouldn't. She always really made a point that it's definitely my decision, or for your listeners, it's their decision, but they can give you this perspective of the years that they spent in working in the field, or they can also give you perspective of the job outside the field, because actually she was not in consulting at all. She didn't know about Vodafone per se. She was working at the time at P&G, like FMCG company. And actually it's that external view that helped me a lot, because she was saying what's good in her field, what she heard from her friends that is good in consulting, or let's say telecommunications at the time. So it also helps a lot that these people that advise you, that they also have their own network, so they know from, let's say, other people that they are on professional level with. Especially in, let's say, smaller countries, I would say, like Czech Republic, Prague. Basically, you have this understanding of the companies, you have this understanding of different professions, and it can really help you if you talk to these mentors who are in the field for a longer time, to just give you a little bit of a backstage perspective what the company is really about, where the industry is going, and so on. Also, I would say that it's always helpful to have these kind of conversations, because if you're just thinking for yourself, maybe you're just looking at the, let's say, 1 to 2 year horizon. When you're talking to a coach or mentor, they can really give you this like a long-term perspective, because usually or at least my experience was, they ask me, but what do you really want to do in the future? Like, do you want to start your own business, or do you want to be in consulting for a longer time? And this is not the question you usually ask yourself, unless you really do some structured thinking about it. And those are exactly this right type of questions, as I call it, that you should ask when you're making this big decision, whether to choose this or that company, whether to choose this or that field. So yeah, this is I would say, the big benefit of coaching as such.
Excellent, excellent, Angie. Now I'm checking the time, and we are close to the end of the podcast. I want to ask: do you think I missed something that you want to talk about during the podcast?
I'm thinking.
Do you want to share some knowledge that I've missed pointing out?
Maybe I would share some failure that I did, and to give
Please
advice.
do.
Maybe so people
Otherwise,
don't repeat it.
Otherwise, people will think you are a robot. So you are working for McKinsey,
Yeah, exactly.
or you studied in London, in Copenhagen, and all these
No.
cool places. And maybe they would think, oh, but she's a genius, either she's a robot. What's happening?
No, not at all. Actually, when I was thinking, because I was looking at the notes that you gave me before, and you are like, maybe one of the questions you usually ask is, what is the biggest failure? I was like, okay, which one to name that is not too embarrassing for me, but people can learn from it? Actually, I chose one experience. I touched upon it briefly when I was talking about Vodafone. It was about changing the mindset of people when you're doing some process change. But it can be very general. Basically, if you are doing some consulting project, my point is to always think about motivation of the people. And now my story goes. So I was a fresh graduate that was appointed to the job at Vodafone, and I was given a task to change the process within the company. It was a process that was done by one person for about maybe, I don't know, 12 years. And then came me, like fresh graduate, who was so, I would say, so lost in what she should do. I was just telling that person, okay, we need to change the process. We need to make it more efficient. And the guy was, why? It's efficient. I was doing it for 12 years. I know it in and out. Like, why are you advising me? You don't know anything about it. You just came fresh from school. I was like, yeah, okay, it's true. So behind the scene, what I definitely should have done, and my advice, always try to understand the motivation of the people. In this case, it was definitely the motivation of the process owner. So I definitely shouldn't have come to them saying, okay, we need to change the process which you have been comfortable with for such a long time because of some efficiency. No, what I should have done is to understand what is maybe the thing that they didn't like about the process, which would make their life easier if we changed it. It was actually, going back to the mentors and coaches, it was actually the advice given by my boss at the time. He was thinking and saying to me, yeah, you're not thinking from the right angle. You're just looking at the operation, but think about the person, like what they're thinking maybe could work better, what would make their life easier. And exactly when I changed this perspective and started asking these kind of questions, the person was completely like turning around 100%, 180%, and was really having like really helpful advice to me and wanted to change the process with me, was very cooperative in the end. So yeah, sometimes we forget forest for the trees, how it's said. So definitely think about internal motivations of people, trying to understand them, try to have an open conversation with them. Maybe one more thing, sometimes if there is a challenging project and I know that people will not really like the change which we are doing, I'm really open about it. Usually I'm quite open in one-to-one conversations. So I tell to them, hey, I know it's maybe not so pleasant in a short-term period, but in the long-term period, these are the benefits that I maybe can see for you. And it completely, I would say, changes their perspective, because from 1 minute to another, you're not that external consultant that just comes to ruin their life, that have been comfortably living for a long time, but you're actually someone that, okay, openly admits it will be not maybe so pleasant for a short time when the change is happening, but in long-term time, you're trying to understand what could really help them, how to make their life easier. And I can definitely say they appreciate it, because then they don't see you as an enemy, but see you as someone who is honest, who is open, and who is trying to help them in the long term. Sorry, that was a long monologue, but I was thinking a lot about it.
I do appreciate, and I see it now, because I think it's a really valuable advice, what you just said. For example, in my personal experience, for example, when I started off giving trainings for clients, often, I mean, in the beginning, I was so concentrated, I was so focused on touching all the points in the agenda, not having on my mind, in the back of my mind, what the client is, I mean, the point of view of the client, that it's going to use either the system or whatever, the solution, right? And it came to me like naturally only after a few trainings that I gave. And I had, because eventually when I started off, I had this, let's say, baseline. Okay, I'm going to touch the subject, and the second one, the third one, and so on, regardless of whatever the client will think. I'm just going to force him to, okay, let's do this and that. And eventually, I mean, later on, I've really, I had to empathize with the client. Okay, maybe the client needs this, and that. So I'm going to start, rather than sticking to my initial agenda, I'm going to change it and I'm going to adapt it to the client needs. And eventually, I think it went well. It went very, very, very well. And the clients, I got a better feedback from the clients when I had to change a bit the agenda, because I had to really empathize with the client. And I think it boils down to this process of putting yourself in the shoes of your client. I mean, it's not always about, okay, we need to be efficient, we need to focus on the process and so on, because it's not always only about the process. Of course, it's great if we can achieve this like efficiency and etc. It's great. This is the goal of the project and so on. But often we have to think about the client. We have to think about, because even for us, if you would have given me the feedback before the meeting and you would have said, okay, Stefan, your first 35 episodes, you were doing things like that. Now I want you to change something just for this episode. And I would have been, no, wait, what are you doing? I've been doing things as I was doing in the past. The things were great. I'm not gonna listen to you now but I have to empathize. I have to listen to what's gonna be the outcome and etc. So I think it's a valuable insight. And it's great, I mean, for every professional out there, and even for students, for everyone, I think it's a very valuable insight that you just, I feel that I should like pay for this type of advice, especially coming from a McKinsey consultant, but
no, but actually I was thinking back at my student times. I just remember when we were giving some group projects. I think it's like the same principle, because I remember our study group at CEMS, we were all like super motivated, maybe too much, and we were like, okay, we need to cover every question that was given to us, and then we produced something like 100 slide presentation, and we proudly gave it to our professor. He was like, guys, are you kidding me? Like, do you think I have time for 100 slide presentation? I have 5 more teams. Like, guys, cut it out. I want 5 slides. I just want the like basics and the like most important, most cool stuff. Like, try to interest me. Like, try to be exciting about it. Like, not 100 slides. And we're like, oh, okay, but we really tried. We put a lot of effort. Like, no. So I think that was applicable to us at the time. Only if we knew, like, we could have spent so much time on different stuff. So yeah, maybe if it's helpful for the listeners, yeah, you can apply it anywhere basically.
Exactly. I mean, it's really interesting what you said. And Angie, I just want to know, is it your first podcast?
Yeah. I had some chat at how is it called? There was a popular platform for some time. I forgot about it. It was basically like podcasts. Anyone could have joined it. Something like coffee. Yeah, so there we had one session with friends of mine, also about slightly consulting. But yeah, as such, the podcast is the first one.
Well, I mean, you've done well. I do
Thank
appreciate
you.
being so candid on the podcast and sharing advice, because I mean, it's especially from your point of view, coming from I mean, being a consultant from McKinsey and having all this knowledge and sharing advice with the listeners. I find it quite valuable.
I'm super happy, and I wanted to pay back basically a little bit in terms of advice, because as I mentioned, like in my career, really what really helped me was this advice from professionals, from the coaches, from the basically alumni of different organizations. So if I can pay back and maybe give some couple of advice to the students, to the listeners, I'm super happy to pay back.
All right. So please let me know, because we've already reached 10 minutes in more than 1 hour, and I know you said you wanna keep it short.
Yeah.
And
it was very enjoyable. Thank you so much. Super happy to be part of it, and thanks again for inviting me.
Likewise, I really enjoyed the discussion, and I need to congratulate you again, both on your personal and professional life. I mean, you accomplished quite some things since leaving Vodafone.
Thank you.
And yeah, keep in touch. And I do appreciate it. It has been such a great discussion, Angie.
Thank you so much, Stefan. Really enjoyed it a lot too. Thanks for inviting me, and all the best for the future episodes. Keep doing what you're doing. I think it's a great idea and cool format. So happy to be part.